Hi, thank you for joining me today. I would like to revisit the birth chart of Kim Kardashian West, specifically on the topic of her marriages. And in order to delineate her marriages, we're going to look at two of the 16 or so Arabic lots or parts of the seventh house. This is a seventh house topic, and so therefore we're going to examine the Arabic lots of the seventh house. I actually prefer the nomenclature Arabic lots because this calls to mind the idea of throwing dice or casting lots to see what kind of fate you get. But at any rate, most of the Arabic lots of the seventh house pertain to the sexual conduct of a native, which is a topic we're not going to get into here. In my next video, we'll look at the part of the religion and honesty of the woman in the chart of a sex worker. But for now, we're going to concern ourselves with the part of women's marriages according to Hermes, which shows the practical, sensible dimension of a woman's ability to relate to a permanent partner. And we're going to look at the part of women's marriages according to Vettius Valens, which shows the more passionate and heart-based nature of a woman's relationship life. Okay, but before we look at any Arabic part for any house topic, we have to delineate the root chart itself to see how that topic plays out. Arabic parts only give secondary confirmation about what the original chart says. So we know that in 2000, Kim married Damon Thomas, a music producer. And in 2011, she married Kris Humphries, a professional athlete. And then in 2014, she married the talented Kanye West. So let's pretend that Kim's mom comes to us in early 80s and wants to know about whether her daughter will get married or not. We would be well within our rights to say, yes, she will get married, but no, it will not be an easy road to hoe, for lack of a better word. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Now, we would also be able to speculate that Kim would have at least 2 husbands and probably 3. So let's go ahead and get started delineating her chart for marriages. The modern astrologer would gravitate towards the 7th house first. And the traditional astrologer would look at that as well. But as we'll see, and we'll get to this in a bit, we actually delineate the husband through, in a female chart, through a woman's solar qualities, okay? And right off the bat, we notice that the sun is at fall in Libra, and its ruler is Venus, positioned 12 signs away from it in Virgo in fall. This, right off the bat, indicates difficulties in the married life. Now, but before we get there, let's look at the 7th house, Gemini, and its ruler Mercury is in the 12th in Scorpio. Now, I know a lot of you guys will be saying, wait a second, Stephen, Mercury is in the 11th. Well, I noticed that Scorpio is the 12th sign of this chart. And I also noticed that Mercury is dynamically cadent, meaning that it's very close to the cusp of the 12th. Now, this is the second time that 12th house symbolism enters into the delineation for marriages in Kim's chart. The first is the ruler of the sun being 12 signs away from it. The second is the ruler of the 7th being in the 12th house. I want to tell you right now, anytime you see the ruler of the 7th in the 12th, you should not be wearing your everything's going to work out for the best hat here. Okay, this is a wretched combination. It is absolutely going to deal to hardship a lot of the time. And the only way such a configuration could work out is if the partner in this case has some kind of job that absents him or her, or takes the partner away for periods of time, like as a trucker or as someone who travels. Because the position of the 7th house ruler in the 12th will try to make an enemy out of the spouse. Now, we have to decide which husband is Mercury. Is he Damon Thomas? Is he Kris Humphries? Is he Kanye? We can rule out Kris Humphries right off the bat because Mercury in the fixed water sign is not going to be fleet of foot and zippy and fast like a basketball player should be. Okay, I've noticed very often that Mercury in water signs designates artists of some sort. And so this leaves Kanye and Damon Thomas. We can rule out Kanye simply because this series of planets describes the leaking of the sex tape video very, very well. Mercury is a universal significator for videos and recording devices. First of all, and music producers. Being in Scorpio is a good match for a music producer. But the clandestine nature of the 12th shows that the video is secret, and the scorpionic nature of the 12th gives the subject of the video, meaning that it's erotic. Also interesting is that the planets in the 12th show a trajectory of experiences. First, there is the videotape itself. Then there is the shock of Uranus as it's released. And then finally, this culminates in the wrath and fury of Mars. So that's Damon Thomas. It didn't work out, and we're not surprised with all that we've noticed here based upon the seventh house lord. So let's look at the sun, which in traditional astrology gives us the main focus for delineating the husband. We note that the sun is in fall, and we note that the sun is cardinal. A lot of times, having the sun in a woman's chart in a cardinal sign is a strong testimony for more than one husband, more than two, possibly. And in fact, this has been the case for Mrs. West. Now, this is not a judgment on a woman who has a sun in a cardinal sign. Such women are numerous. It's more of a judgment against the male or the spouse in this case, because the cardinality of the sign will change the male. It will make him absent. It will take him away. It will change his personality in a radical way sometimes. It changes the husband, not the woman. Now, traditionally, the cardinal signs were referred to as mobile signs or movable signs or changeable signs to reflect this ability to radically modify planets and points that are in it. And indeed, classically, the cardinal signs were known as tropical signs, such as Cancer and Capricorn. These are tropical signs, or equinoctial signs, such as Libra and Aries, because the seasons change when the sun enters into these signs. These signs designate the change of seasons. So, right off the bat, we're knowing that she's going to have more than one husband, without doubt. And in fact, when we examine the planets that are in the sign of the sun, Pluto and Saturn, we're going to exclude Jupiter in Virgo and Venus in Virgo. We notice that Pluto and Saturn are oriental of the sun, rising above the sun, rising before the sun in the morning. And so these show either Kris Humphries or Kanye West, both of these two husbands. We've already dealt with Damon Thomas. So which is which? It's my judgment that Pluto is a match for Kris Humphries, the basketball player, because that marriage lasted only 72 days, for one. And for another, Pluto is associated with the 12th house. And so the 12th house, as we've seen, is detrimental to the marriages of Kim Kardashian West. So that's a match for Kris Humphries. Saturn, exalted in Libra, is more of a hit for Kanye West, okay? And Saturn is a universal significator for African Americans, whereas Pluto is not. And Mr. West is more obviously of African descent than Mr. Humphries is. So automatically, we see here that the marriage life of Kim Kardashian is going to be a bit tumultuous. But I'm not going to speculate about her current marriage to Kanye West. It seems to have some longevity, and I'm pulling for them, okay? So with all of that said, now we're going to look at the Arabic parts of marriage and to see if these parts jive up or dovetail with the general delineation of marriage that is in the chart. Okay, so first of all, we'll deal with the part of women's marriages according to Hermes, the practical, sensible part. We take the distance from Venus to Saturn. Why these two terms? Because Venus is a symbol of femininity, a symbol of love, and Saturn is a symbol of durability, something that lasts. And the ancients believed that marriage was something that ought to last. You know, I have this informal theory that one day after I'm long dead and gone, marriages will actually be executed in contracts of 5 to 10 years or something of that nature. That's just an informal theory, not based on astrology at all, just a philosophical musing on my part. So the distance between Venus and Saturn is 24 degrees, and we cast that distance from the ascendant. Note that we go in the direction of the signs. We don't cast it backwards. We don't go 24 degrees backwards against the order of the signs. We go 24 degrees forward in the direction of the signs. And the part lands at 7 degrees of Capricorn, a cardinal sign. We've already talked about how the cardinality of a sign can change a point in it, okay? So that right there is sort of consistent with the rest of the message of the chart. But Abu Mashar also said that if this part is in a sign of cunning and craft, then the woman can seduce whatever man she wishes. Okay, and Capricorn is indeed such a sign of cunning and craft. The other ones are Leo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Okay, so the part is angular. It's in a good condition by being angular, and it is square. It's ruler. Its sign ruler is Saturn, and Saturn squares it. We want to see the ruler of an Arabic part aspecting the part, even if it's by a square or an opposition. Certainly the negative components of the square and the opposition will be meaningful in the delineation, but the fact that the ruler squares it at all is what's really important, and it shows that indeed Mrs. West will marry. It confirms the other testimonies of the root chart, in other words. The ruler of the part is in the 10th, and that is also very strong. But Capricorn is the second sign from the rising sign, and I associate that with money, but also with advisors. And it allows us to speculate that perhaps Mrs. West saw Damon Thomas, the first husband, as some sort of a mentor, or hoped to deal with him in an advisory capacity. You know, she was 20 when she married him, so it's quite possible that she hoped to learn a thing or two from Damon Thomas. And that would be consistent with the part falling in the first Placidus house and the second sign. Capricorn is a materialistic, ambitious type of sign as well. And so that's the practical, sensible component of her marriage. So let's look at the other part of women's marriages according to Valens. This is calculated from the distance between the moon, which is a sign of femininity as well, a planet of femininity as well, and Mars, a symbol of desire and chasing after what you want. And the distance here is 248 degrees between these two, which we cast from the ascendant, and voila, it lands at 21 degrees of Leo. Note that Leo is fixed. It's fixed, whereas Capricorn is cardinal. So right off the bat, this tells us that, hey, if she follows her heart, instead of trying to do what's sensible, if she follows her heart, she has a shot at a marriage that has longevity. Okay, notice also that the part falls in the 9th, giving it a spiritual component as well. So this is very, very helpful. Let's look at Kanye's chart real fast. And we notice his 9th house has a moon in Pisces, which also Kim has. And so I find this quite significant that his moon in Pisces is in the 9th, and her part of women's marriages, according to Valens, is also in the 9th. Also, Leo is a sign of an entertainer, or perhaps someone who has a lot of influence over people as well. So that's more of a match for Kanye too. Now let's look at the ruler of this part. It's the sun in fall, and it sextiles the part. That's all to the good. That's fine. The sextile is a little wide, and in fact, I might not be inclined to count it. We want aspects that are going to have an orb of about 5 degrees, okay, about 5 degrees. So with that said, we note that the sun rules the part, and the sun is ruled by Venus 12 signs away from it. So that makes us worry a little bit about the long-term survivability of the marriage. But again, I'm not going to speculate whether there's going to be a divorce, because I try to be an optimist whenever possible. However, there will be troubles with this marriage too. And the trouble with all of her marriages is going to be that the marriage will suppress her solar qualities. It seems that with Kanye, hopefully this suppression of her solar identity will be something that's rather amenable, if not tolerable, to her. So that's a fairly decent setup right there. And, you know, I think that she might have a shot. So this concludes our analysis of the parts, and hopefully Kim will have a good result with her marriage to Kanye West. In my next video, we will look at the parts of the religion and honesty of the woman in the chart of a prostitute, and hopefully learn a little something from that. Now, just to summarize how to delineate these parts, you want to look at the sign of the part, you want to see what house it's in, and you want to note its ruler's attitude toward it. So look at the part, look at the sign and the house, and look at the ruler, or even rulers of the part. So let's go back to the part of women's marriages according to Hermes. Saturn is the sign ruler of the part, but Mars is the exaltation lord. And look, Mars is 12 signs away from it. Here's a third entrance of the 12th house symbolism into her married life. Mars is an exaltation ruler of the part, in aversion to it, not aspecting it. Also, in a day chart like this, Venus is the triplicity ruler of the chart, and you know, she aspects Capricorn, but she does not aspect the part itself. And we also note that Venus is in the sign of her fall in the 9th. This is actually, on a different note, a match for her experience in Paris when she was robbed. Venus is ruled by Mercury, and we've already said a lot about Mercury and its difficult nature in this chart. Going back to the part of women's marriages, according to Volans, the sun is the sign ruler. And in a day chart like this, the sun would also be the triplicity lord as well. So this is how we delineate the parts. We see that the parts jive with the overall testimony of the chart itself by saying that Kim will in fact marry, but the parts also set up some chop in the waters of Kim's relationships, and it shows the difficulties. The difficulties specifically will be of the 12th house nature, making a private enemy or a secret enemy out of the husband, or the husband perhaps having this idea of her. And in fact, we look at the significator for Kanye, which is Saturn, and it's in an opposition, a very wide opposition, but it still sort of counts, with the moon. Thankfully, it's a wide out of sign opposition. And so that will bode well, hopefully, for the relationship in terms of making it survivable. And let's all keep our fingers crossed. So that's what I have for you today. Stay tuned for the next video, and we'll talk about the part of the religion and honesty of the woman. Thank you very much.